Hello and a warm welcome to yet another episode on the Mission Shunya podcast channel. I hope you are feeling good today because I have yet another great conversation lined up on this show. Before that, if you are a regular listener, you would have noticed that the podcast episode is released every fortnight and it should automatically come up on your platform. That is, if you have subscribed or marked Mission Shunya as a favorite. But if this is the first time you are tuning in, I hope you enjoy this podcast episode and probably subscribe to it at the end of it. This week's guest is Vishal Pandya, an entrepreneur who has grown his business as the regulatory environment in the Indian electricity sector started seeing a transformation. I am sure you'll enjoy the conversation as you hear about how REConnect actively engaged with the regulators to keep pushing for favorable environment to launch new products. It's a very candid and engaging conversation on entrepreneurship in the cleantech sector. And it also marks 10 years of REConnect's journey. So without further ado, here's the feature segment. Hello Vishal, welcome to the Mission Shunya podcast.
Hi Girish, thank you very much.
So Vishal, let's start with the why. Why did you start REConnect? How did it start and how's the journey been so far?
Yeah, very good question. A couple of days down the line, we are going to complete 10th year for our REConnect Energy, and it's been a great journey so far in terms of, as an organization offering a lot of learning opportunities. The sector also has been moving very, very fast. When we started, the idea was to start something in renewables, knowing that we want to contribute towards the green economy. And this was like around 2009, 2010, where I met Vibhav over LinkedIn. It was around mid 2009. We met over LinkedIn, and he started, he wanted to start something. And right from my IIT Bombay days, there was kind of a wish to have your own venture, and that's how we, kind of connected. There was a lot of synergies. We saw that he comes from, finance, CA background. I come from engineering background. One commonality though was that we both were working in environmental markets. I was working with IEX at that time, looking after business development, largely on day-ahead market, term-ahead market. Renewable energy credits market was kind of about to get started, and that was my area of kind of research, even during my academic days at IIT Bombay. So, and Vibhav was working in the carbon market, leading a lot of carbon financing projects for company managing emissions. Yes, and we thought that it's it would be a good start. We of course didn't want to put in a lot of capex, which the industry demands, and we focused on doing some sort of, you can call it consulting slash brokerage or trading services for renewable energy credits. And the overall objective was that we'll eventually move into kind of tech domain where we start offering analytics. So that was the brief idea, like when we began. And we incorporated REConnect Energy on 22nd September 2010.
That's fantastic. So it's been 10 years and 10 wonderful years, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a bumpy ride, but yeah, wonderful, of course.
We will talk about all the projects that you have done and everything, but
Yeah.
it's been a good journey. And for someone who started a little later than that, ReConnect was one company which was always in the news and it was always making the right noises, if I could say that.
Good, good. Glad that you noticed.
No, Vishal, as you said, you wanted to do something, and the main focus or the first focus was looking at REC trading and
Yeah.
renewable energy certificates. So, how did that idea come about? And early on, I believe REC trading was something that really caught on, and it enabled a lot of commercial and industrial players to kind of
Yeah.
buy into the idea that wind energy, in particular, was a favorable option.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
how was the journey with that?
Yeah, so the foundation for that was a twofold. One is that Vibhav was working in the carbon markets, and he had good hands-on experience in the carbon trading, both domestically and internationally. And RECs were more of a domestic, carbon credit equivalent for Indian market. And so architecturally, it was like a comfort zone for Vibhav. For me also, Professor Khapade, with whom I worked with closely at IIT Bombay. He was advising IEX on the REX market design in India. I was part of that, and even for IEX, we used to run road shows, kind of propagating the idea of having REX market institutionalized in India. So that way, I mean, we had good hands-on understanding, and the broad objective was this: like, I mean, you want to start something. Somewhere you have to start. You of course can't put a lot of capex that otherwise the sector demands. So we evaluated few areas, and here we thought that people would want some sort of services, and the focus initially for us was that okay, people will want services. How do we validate? So while both of us were kind of working, Vibhav's wife was on leave for maternity, and she was kind of at home. To test the market, we kind of created a newsletter, circulated it among some 200, 300 people, and we started getting some responses, and we felt that okay, if we get a few clients early on, we might be able to at least recover the cost and run the organization with 3 4 people. And that is how we started. I mean, there was, I mean, of course, some degree of kind of risk in terms of how the funds will come, if you have to hire people, how much more you can contribute. And we prepared kind of founders agreement well in time, much before the company was incorporated, highlighting that how we are going to run the organization, how we are going to make decisions, how much capital we have obligation to kind of bring on table between friends and family. And that is how we started. And the key differentiator that we wanted to basically establish was that, I mean, it was a new market, a lot of questions would be there. Can you create kind of value proposition around knowledge economy? So can you differentiate yourself, at least in terms of, even though you are new, you are a few people company, and our competition was with many large players. For example, EY was big name in the carbon space. Then there were a bunch of other company like General Carbon. Gensol had a massive portfolio in carbon domain. Many trading companies like PTC, Tata, and a bunch of other trading firms. So we had like intense competition also to kind of catch up on, and we were practically 2 people company at that point in time. So the key area where we focus that when we go out in the market, people should really realize and understand that okay, these guys know the business. These guys know the exact nitty-gritties of everything that needs to be done, and you can trust on these folks. I mean, more than a company, and that's how we started.
That's very well said. I mean, that is actually what happens when entrepreneurs just start out and seek business. Business is one on trust, and especially in this sector,
Right.
people want to trust, and especially in something new product that's launched. And when people are trusting you,
Correct.
it's like a 25-year PPA that they are signing, also with the hedge that they're going to get some money out of the REC market. So
Correct.
they need to trust people,
Yes.
and that is something you have wonderfully enabled.
Right.
I mean, for someone who went into the market few years later, if I had to tell people that you can also make money in the REC market in 2012, 2013, people still thought, yeah, REConnect is there. We are already tied up with them.
Yeah.
So you got the trust factor very well in place. So,
Correct.
but REC has a story towards the end
Yeah.
of this decade. Oh, what's your thought on that?
Yeah. I mean, so if you look at what has happened, REC also is kind of an outcome of all the international directives or pressure points that gets created on various countries. And India, of course, wanted to take formidable position in renewable, not as formidable as what we have seen the current government is making. But even early on, we had this national mission on enhanced energy and efficiency, national mission on clean energy, and so on and so forth. It was more about projecting that yes, India is moving forward. There would be obligation to buy renewables, and we all know how the law, is enforced in India. If there is a benefit, the corporates will not even utter a word and just grab the benefit. But the moment there is a financial obligation where you tend to lose out, or you have to spend something beyond what you are doing, then of course there will be a lot of challenges, and that's what happened with the REC market. In 10, the regulation came up. The first trade that happened, very few RECs were available. It was like a jackpot. for the people who participated. All of a sudden, you could see that for a virtual instrument, you could get as high as like 3 rupee 90 paisa unit,
Correct.
and that created kind of a wave. And over next 2 years, I mean, or rather within next 12 months, not even 2 years, we saw a lot many projects starting to come, under registration, and a lot many other existing projects like captive projects and all. When they started coming with lot many RECs, we knew that market is going to tank. So March 11 was the first trade that happened in REC, and around March 12, we advised all our clients that look, the rates are continuously climbing, compliance here is coming, but the rates were around like 2,100 or 2,400, and that's for non-solar REC. And for solar, it was almost like running at peak.
Correct.
The forbearance price was, I think, some 9 rupee something, 9 rupee 30 paisa or so, or 14 rupee something. I forgot the numbers. But we advised all our non-REC, non-solar REC client that you better sell it in March, because next year will start with April, the first month of compliance. Nobody will comply, and then we could foresee that a lot of non-solar RECs are kind of getting piled up to be dumped in the market. And in March, the rate went down from this was March 12. Rate went down from 2,400 in Feb to around 2,000 or 2,200. In April, it collapsed, and it remained collapsed for like 3 years or so, because there were so many RECs, and not many takers, because everybody thought bye bye, right? Especially the discoms, and it took time for regulatory commissions to kind of catch on with the fact that the utilities have to comply. And we also went into kind of tailspin. That first year was first 2 years were like pretty good in terms of seeing some trajectory, some traction. We were already like holding almost 45% of 40-45% of RECs in the market. We still have similar position, and I mean, the market dynamics completely changed. I mean, we could see the team's morale also kind of going down, seeing a lot of uncertainty around not only the REC market, but then also the organization, because you are like one business company, and if that business doesn't do well, I mean, the next question is, where will you go?
Correct.
Right. And I mean, those were like difficult times. I mean, we could literally see in people's eyes. I mean, we were like 10-15 people company, and a good number of people, when we talk, you see the pain, right? What they see a lot of uncertainty. And in fact, there was a time where we also felt that maybe this is not going to head anywhere, and let's think of either winding up or selling it up to some larger company who can at least maintain it in terms of managing the workflow and keeping people. And this is around 2013, somewhere around 2013. Yes.
But at that point, I think that is when you hit the next idea. And I'm sure this was also the process where you were talking to people, mostly commercial and industrial people,
Yeah.
trying to create value proposition for them, trying to say like, okay, this is the actual price of power that you can buy at.
Correct.
Why do you want to pay someone a even higher price?
Right.
So that is how click power was conceptualized, if I'm right.
Yeah. So the idea was originated like back in 2012 itself. I mean, not because the way REC was. We always wanted to do something on the tech front. So our interaction with Infuse started in early 2012. They were also in their formative stages back then. MNRE was kind of conceptualizing the whole platform, and then they provided seed funding, BP and IFC and other stakeholders like ICICI Ventures. They also joined on board for Infuse, and they had a boot camp, I think, sometime around late 2012, evaluating a lot of cleantech companies in India. And there we pitched this idea that we work in REC segment, but we see a lot of opportunity for people wanting to buy power directly from a private player. And this market is also kind of flooded with brokers, and TN was apparently a very hot market. While I was working at IEX, there are a bunch of people. I would not name them, but you won't believe people were charging as high as 20 paisa for you can call it advisory or brokerage services, and sometimes even 1 rupee. Right? Not being a trader, you still do all these transactions, book revenue in your books. I mean, nobody's asking you anything. All people wanted was to buy power, 6 rupee, 7 rupee, 9 rupee. Just give me power. Those were the days. There were some players in Tamil Nadu who kind of made a killing around that time. And our idea was that, I mean, why should this happen, right? I mean, there needs to be a better way to kind of reach out to the market. And renewable was again a new thing, right? The group captive was kind of a brainchild of Tamil Nadu open access story, right? Most of the contracts happened in group captive. So our objective was that how do we make buyers and sellers meet in a very scalable way, and there is a high degree of transparency around that, and that's where the concept of click power was born, and we pitched it to Infuse liked it, and they were like, okay, let's put some small investment and see how it plays out.
And again, that was a very brilliant idea, and it was kind of an enabler for both the buyers and sellers
Yeah,
to kind of weigh the market and price the market appropriately.
correct.
But again, electricity as a sector runs into a lot of regulations and a lot of hurdles.
Yes.
I'm sure even you had a lot of hurdles to get this rolling as well.
Yeah. We had a more than fair share of, you know, start and stop events.
Because something as novel as this, when you take it to the regulators, when they are aware, they are like, how can this happen? And
Yeah, correct. So I mean, when we, got Infuse on board, the seed money was primarily like for REC, we didn't need money. I mean, it was like, the market may go lean, we may go lean, we may survive, or we may do something else. But the investment that came from Infuse basically validated two things. That one is, okay, there are people who can still back you up. Second is that that money helped us ride through the massive dip that the REC market created in terms of revenues. So it helped us to continue the momentum on the new areas where we wanted to work, starting with this marketplace. So in 15, when we launched the marketplace, I mean, the idea was good. I remember the day we had our first kind of press release in Economic Times. It was around, I think, mid 2015 or so, around August or September. We received like endless calls from all over India. It was kind of a beta launch. We had kept intrastate market in focus. Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Delhi, because Delhi, a lot of consumer wanted to buy power from elsewhere. And within like about 75 to 80 days, we received like 890 inquiries from various corners, including some of the distribution companies asking, can we really buy renewable power from this platform? And I mean, it was we were very much excited around it, because almost 1.5 year had gone into kind of conceptualizing how do you virtualize the whole negotiation, because end of the day it's a over the counter transaction, OTC you call it.
correct.
And people negotiate not only on just price the way you do on exchange, but it's also on variety of parameters. What is the tenure, what is the credit rating, what are the other aspects like transmission charges, wheeling charges, and losses, and the cross subsidy, and what if the change in law happens, how do you deal with those conditions? And we took a lot of time in terms of conceptualizing it. And later on, I mean, people wanted to do a lot of interstate transactions as well, and that's where Central Commission also thought that if interstate transactions are going via any particular platform, then it's important that we understand. And that's where we started interacting with the Central Commission, and we filed a petition that currently it's intrastate, we want to go interstate, and allow us to operate till you figure out the regulatory provisions are not, I mean, they are there in terms of enabling provision that OTC market will also happen,
Correct.
and market is also kind of well defined. And the petition went on for like a year. Around Feb 17, we got a judgment that okay, commission accepted the idea. Honorable Commission said in its order that it's a very important idea. There is a gap in the market, and it needs to be bridged. And they directed the staff of the commission to come up with a staff paper. The staff paper didn't come, but finally the latest power market regulation which has come up, their honorable commission and the staff have incorporated a full section on OTC market. So that is still a good beginning. But it's been about now 5 years. There is nothing happening there. Now we are seeing some hope that something may move here.
That's been a long journey because
Yeah.
but I think this whole experience of dealing with the digital platform, I think, kind of moved you to a next set of projects,
Yeah.
the renewable energy management centers.
Correct.
And I think those were also coming up in the market at that point in time when renewable energy in India was scaling up a
Correct.
little big time between 2014 to 2016, when a lot
Yeah.
of interstate transactions was happening at the grid level, and
Correct.
yeah, so you got into that as well. So how's the experience been with that?
So again, like, I mean, people think of tunnel vision, they talk a lot about it. In our case, I mean, the tunnels have been narrow, right? I mean, it's not that everything what you do today was like planned 10 years ago. So I would like to be honest and say that we had to kind of adjust ourselves to the reality, or harsh reality you call it, and see that how do you make best use of the resources what you have, the capabilities what you have, and how do you make sure that you don't collapse as an organization. I mean, end of the day, you have to keep working and see that things keep moving, and that's what we did. I mean, we started building IT team for platform. The whole regulatory side, we saw that it may get stuck. Simultaneously, this forecasting and scheduling requirements were coming out. Here also, if you look at the background, if somebody had read grid code in 2010 and built a company around that, they would have also gone bankrupt.
Correct.
Right. The regulation came in 2010. The first implementation happened in 2013. That around 6 months ago we started working around that. That again got kind of collapsed. So we built like very small portfolio, 600, 800 megawatt. People were ready to pay at that time, and then a lot of high court petitions went. One in Chennai, one in Delhi. The petition gave out a verdict that okay, the regulation needs to be changed and needs to be modified, and the final set of regulations started coming around 2015. So again, this was not like a smooth ride. You get some clients, you see a policy, the policy looks, I mean, affirmative from the long term point of view, but then the policy may get scrapped. So we had like 20 gigawatt solar target, we were nowhere close to 20. Now we have very much larger target, and at least we see a trajectory. Even if we don't hit 175, or even if we hit say 70-80% of that, it's still a commendable achievement as a country. I mean, the time space element, if you see here, time is not a luxury, right, for most of the startups. And this segment kind of goes completely against you when you look at from the time dimension alone. You want a large tender to be participate, the tender may take 2 years to first of all conceptualize, and then the announcement will come. The evaluation will take like 6 to 9 months, sometimes a year, and then the execution may take own sweet time. And if at all you win, then if the tender is for 5 years, 10% of entire contract has to be paid. So if it's an annual price contract, you might end up paying a lot more money upfront as an EMD, which the startups may not have, right? So I mean that there have been like lots and lots of kind of ifs and buts. I think 3 years in between, say around 13 to 16 or even up to 17, I, I I would not hesitate to say that for us as an organization, the direction was like not very clear. That you launch Click Power, the petition is going on. It was like we only originated petition, but then there were some players in the market. They also started advertising that okay, see, they have been caught in a petition, whereas we were the petitioner, not the respondent, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, you also deal with those cases, right? And the REC again had its own, journey, like moving somewhere or not moving anywhere. You have like million REC, and end of the trade, you trade like 30,000 REC, right? And the clients also were like super, depressed around the fact that they put a lot of effort and kind of batted on REC market, let go a lot of lucrative FIT PPAs back then, and now nothing is happening. So those 3-4 years, I think around 15, 16, we were kind of not exactly knowing how things are and where things will go. So all we focused was like, okay, let's keep our head down, keep working, focus on technology. One good thing that happened was in the forecasting space, regulation came and went away. We knew that this has to come back in some or other form. So we used that window of opportunity to build technology. Because earlier when we started, we were like, let's work with other European players like what everyone else is doing, and we felt that data is a problem. The moment you go to your forecasting partner, they'll immediately say, I mean, forecast can be this only, data is so bad. And then if you want to offer a service where you have no control, you are acting like a trader, where most of our current the past competition come from. we were not comfortable with that idea. So we started working on building forecasting. So hired few people, gave them mandate that whatever you need in terms of limited expenditure, experiment. The forecasting may work, may not work, but let's see how we can continuously improvise. And that is where, I mean, 2 3 years we got in terms of window to kept experimenting and building technology. And we also got a lot of support from stakeholders. I mean, credit to the entire sector, where while the regulations were not there, the obligation on the generator was there, to kind of keep providing forecast. So we told our clients that okay, you don't pay us, it's fine, right? But at least we'll help you to comply with the obligation, and you don't have to spend time and effort and energy around that. And that is how we kind of built our first forecasting engine around wind, and then we started working on solar. And we got a good break in around 2016, around December 16, where we won this Getco contract. And that was like one sizable project. It was kind of a good jump for us to work directly with the utility. And we put like our heart and soul into that, hired few more resources, and also executed the contract very successfully. And that led to newer projects like REMC. And in India, we were perhaps back then we were the only technical, I mean, only entity having technical expertise who could work at that scale. And we again like went very very aggressively to partner with stakeholders like Siemens and OSI. And they also saw that, I mean, there is a degree of credibility and assurance which the organization reflects, and they again trusted us to deliver such a large project. And we have delivered it now. All REMCs are operational, running up in the ground, and the stakeholders have started using it.
That's wonderful. I mean, it again reemphasizes that being, as you rightly said, you have a good founding team, you are good in technical, other person is good in finance, and then you build the capability around
Correct.
clients by you knew the regulations well because you were working with clients and the market for a long time, and then putting all the pieces together.
Yeah.
That's like a wonderful journey, and I think this is where you kind of your current pivot is at building a digital platform.
Right.
And what's in your opinion, like, why is it very crucial to build a digital platform, and where do you see the digital platform that is enabling consumers to have better control over their energy needs? Where do you see that going the next few years?
Yeah, so if you look at the whole energy landscape, the earlier it was vertically integrated economy. Then the economists started talking that since it is vertically integrated, the efficiencies are not around, and let's unbundle everything. So if you look at 2000 to 2015 or 18 or even 20, a lot of emphasis was that let's unbundle. The Electricity Act 2003 was also revolving around that. Let's unbundle.
Correct.
Now, if you look at what's happening after unbundling, a lot of private players have started coming in. The sector, not only in India but globally, if you see, it's going through a massive, what you can call it, IRR squeeze, right?
Correct.
I mean, the renewable projects that are being built today, they are bid for very aggressively. The IRRs, maybe slightly above a double-digit number. And if you take all the future risk, a generation falling, lower on the account of climate change, which is already started happening. This year, we have seen the overall wind generation is lower by 30 to 40% across India. And grid availability, it's going to deteriorate, right? It is the proven fact. I mean, you look beyond India, look at Germany, look at China, look at California, right? Backdowns are essential things, and so far we have seen that the investors are not factoring in. So if the ecosystem is moving towards a massive IRR squeeze, how do you improve the operational efficiency? And there is only one way to kind of make your asset performing better, make your entire organizational structure go lean. It can only come via technology, I mean group of technologies. And when I say a digital platform, I mean it's not going to be just one platform per se. It's going to be a combination of hardware and software and servers and a bunch of other things which can bring reliability in your day-to-day decision making and operations management. And this is where I feel that our sector is kind of poised to leapfrog in digitalization over next decade, where bunch of new things will start seeing getting rolled out at a very large scale. REMCs are like just tip of an iceberg, where what is the objective REMC is delivering? The top-down visibility of renewables was missing, right? REMC aimed to establish that to begin with. So there are three components in REMC. You bring state-of-the-art SCADA, connect all the assets to SCADA. Second, you bring AI so that the predictability aspects become reliable for the grid operators. And third is apply massive automation layer. So all of renewables must be dispatched via those REMCs. And REMCs are conceptualized as kind of a separate control centers of their own. And each state or control center has dedicated manpower to manage REMC and operate it. So now with REMCs being available on ground, there is an instant visibility starting from NLDC. If you're sitting in NLDC, you can practically go down to any wind and solar farm in India and look at what is happening. How much is the generation? How is the forecast? Hour down the line, tomorrow, week down the line, right? What is the asset type, asset class? What kind of technologies are being used? What's the hub height, or what's the whether it's a solar panel? What kind of inverters are there? Is it single axis, dual axis? Tracking is there or not there? I mean, this information itself was not there. So purely from the asset visibility point of view, this has created it. Asset operations and maintenance, again, there are lots and lots of talks going on. How do we make the operational efficiency of assets better, right? And that's where I think the whole digitalization wave will kick in, and the incident around COVID will only accelerate it.
True. I mean, at a time when a lot of people fear going to power plants to see noting down inverter readings, I'm
Correct.
sure.
Yes.
Vishal, as you mentioned about how REMCs are operated, the Renewable Energy Management Centers,
Yeah.
um, you didn't mention that this has been just only a few months or less than a year since the Indian ones are fully operational.
Correct.
But in comparison to global ones, what are the pros and cons? Are Indian ones on par with the global ones, according to you?
Yeah, so I mean, the whole concept is kind of novel in itself. So there are countries like Germany where TSO level, similar concept is being developed. So like if you take TSOs like 50 hertz in Germany, they also do forecasting. They engage, multiple forecasters the way Indian REMCs have done. Uh, but the optimization, what happens, around those forecasts is still being done manually in Germany. I mean, to the extent what we understand. This is also kind of been validated by various other stakeholders who operate in German market very actively. US, on the other hand, if you see, it's kind of a super fragmented market, right? There is nothing like national market or national grid. It's always like, while there is a national grid, I mean, each ISO in US has its own jurisdiction, and they operate completely different.
Correct.
I think this is where we as a country have done phenomenally well. We built a REX market, top down. So there is a national registry which kind of creates REC and also enables redemption of RECs. The origination can happen via different states. And what it created was like a extremely high efficiency in terms of providing these REC trade services, where a central regulator can take a view on how the market to be shaped. Same if you look at in US, there is still this over-the-counter REC transactions are happening, and there are a bunch of companies making decent money there. There is no transparency, there is no efficiency. The cost of transaction is also very very large, same as carbon markets. So in a way, we have done like extremely well in terms of building our infrastructure, building our markets, and keeping India as one country, one grid, and also now one market, pretty much around that. Same way, REMCs, if you look at in US, California, you saw like the blackouts happened, and the backdowns are becoming a routine affair now.
Correct.
And one of the reason is that they are not able to handle renewables, and not only the variability, but sometimes the excessive power which is being fed into the grid, right? And the grid is becoming unstable around that. So this is definitely not there in USA. I mean, people say that we are doing forecasting, we do manage, but I mean, in terms of architecture and design, I mean, Credit to the regulators and stakeholders like POSOCO and various load dispatch centers. In terms of handling the operational issues, I think we have done exceedingly well. China also is not very different if you see. I mean, there are a couple of provinces where the renewable backdown is as high as 35-36%. So this kind of infrastructure, I mean, it's well conceptualized and also kind of well executed, with whatever limited resources that government could spare for.
That's really great to know, and good to know that this entire approach has been driven down right from the regulators, the load dispatch centers,
Correct.
and POSOCO, for example, has been like a good leader in this regard.
Yes.
Now, now Vishal, back to REConnect. So you worked with industrial players, general industries, enabling them to get power at an optimal price. Then you worked with utilities, enable them to understand what happens when too much of renewables come into the grid. And
Correct.
now with the National Load Dispatch Center. So what's next for REConnect as a company?
So, I mean, we are focusing more and going deeper into the same set of technologies. So when we say, we work on tech, we are, focusing on five distinct areas. And so one is, of course, AI, where we start predicting, be it demand forecasting or renewable power forecasting or even price forecasting to an extent. Automation, like this dispatch automation we have done online STO application for Maharashtra, which is operational since past 2 years or so now. Bunch of other automation tools that we have built, and we see a lot more opportunities around that, but this remains like building something around IT. But AI, automation, IoT is another kind of stack that we have built, and we are working on many more use cases. Weather forecasting and GIS are other areas. So when we say grid connect, it has kind of five distinct dimensions: AI, IoT, automation, weather, and GIS. GIS because you would want to visualize everything, keeping geography in mind, and Google Maps and other things where you can use it. It doesn't give you leverage in terms of what more you can do with the information. So if every information you have mapped with a geography, and that sensitivity is embedded, you can do a lot more in terms of variety of asset management. Then you are not restricted to only just putting a that location icon on a map and just be happy around it's not useful. Similarly, on IoT, we are working on bunch of use cases where you can connect variety of sensors, variety of protocols, and transmit signal either using Wi-Fi or GPRS or even radio frequency based protocols like LoRa. And there are different applications. So, for example, when we started working on wind and solar power forecasting is dependent on data. What happens is most of the people, since they are doing it for the first time in terms of forecasting and scheduling, they feel that okay, I have given a contract, now these guys are supposed to forecast, but there is no underlying data. You don't get data on time. Sometimes you just don't get data. How do you forecast? You forecast based on plain weather forecast applied to a typical power curve, and it can go horribly wrong because I mean, you have not seen what is the real trend. So that is what like another issue we had to kind of solve. So if you want to operate at a scale and data is not there, the decision was that should we tell our BD team that okay, first ask what client has. If client has good SCADA data, then chase them aggressively and take it. I mean, we know a competitor pretty much did that. They identified this upfront, saying, okay, you have data, okay, I'll go very aggressively for you. You don't have data, I'll not work with you. Right. And you can't build a business around that. So we told client that okay, you don't have data now, can you at least allow us to access your meter? If you have meter, we'll put our modem, right? We'll do it at our own cost if you don't want to fund it, but we need data. Now if you don't have data, this is how the forecast can go horribly wrong. And we had those instances, right? You the compliance date is like you start forecasting from 1st of July, 30th night client will say, oh, this is what my lat long is, start forecasting somehow, forget data. And couple of months goes just like that. You are just forecasting, and without any like calibration or a detailed modeling that otherwise you'll want to do. And then if all of a sudden the DSM comes, it will blow out of proportion.
Correct.
So we had to kind of do some kind of jugaadgiri to ensure that we have low cost model, because most of the clients were not happy to accept the fact that data is essential. and we had to kind of break that barrier around. So we most of the sites that we have put our modems now, the small IoT sensors, which can work with any meter now, any protocol, DLMS or Modbus, and we had to kind of hire people to work at embedded circuit level programming, just to make sure that we are able to read meter. Meter reading is another nightmare on its own. People don't cooperate, the meter guys, right? They'll force you that you buy their own hardware, which may work, which may not work. You are back to the square one. So so you have to kind of do a lot of jugglery around understanding, okay, if this is the protocol, what all they can do. Think like that, do all permutation combination, manually calibrate first reading first, so that you know that what you are reading is right. So we did that, right, for about 300 sites now, or 230 sites rather, totaling 11 gigawatt.
Yeah, that's a very unfortunate situation because I mean the entire information age is all about data, and access to data is one thing.
Correct.
For whatever reason, is either very proprietary or very confidential that people just don't want to let it out.
So the funniest thing here is like, so you are a generator. You're asked to install RTUs. RTUs need meters. Meters are installed. RTU is interfacing with meter. RTU is feeding data to say load dispatch center, which is as per grid code. Now that data generator doesn't have. Okay, so he has invested at one place. Second requirement is put main check and standby meter. So main check and standby meter are put. These again, bit depending upon the state where you are, it can vary into few lakhs to sometimes 10 lakh and above. A small metering device can cost you that much. So you invest there also. These also are not in your custody. So what do you do? Then you put third meter, I mean fourth meter rather, or fifth meter rather, because you already put a meter for RTU. RTU data is not there. These meters, they are not telemeters. Somebody will come once a month and just do a energy reading. The load survey data was not even being conceptualized. So then people like us come and say, where is your data? Then they'll say, okay, it's my wind farm. Let me ask my OEM. OEM will say, okay, now this site is supposed to give SCADA. I can give you, but it's not part of the contract. Right. So SCADA, you pay me. And when you look at the SCADA, either you get SCADA, couple of hours down the line, or sometimes we just don't get it. Now, 16 revisions during the day, if you have to make most optimal forecast and minimize the penalty, you don't get half of the information in time. So you paid like 3 places and you still don't have data solution. So the moment somebody like us go and say, sir, we still need data, it's like make best, use of whatever you have and ensure that my forecast is 100% accurate, which is not possible. And then the next layer you go is, okay, sir, we have you got spare meter? They may experiment with their site and say, okay, we have spare meter. The next question, can we read it? Then they'll say meter installing company. They'll say, sir, the meter is from so and so company, and they'll not allow you to read. Right? Why? Because they want to sell their own additional hardware for it. So it's like a funny industry.
On one end, the electricity sector is highly regulated, and on the other end, all this proprietary hardware software combinations kind of.
Correct.
But glad in all through this, you have been like constantly working to find a niche around what you have to offer, what is the value proposition that you offer to
Right.
customers, and glad that's been a good journey. So Vishal, REConnect is completing a decade in this space. So as a company, how do you plan to build the company going forward, and what are your plans on that front?
Yeah. So 10 years have been like, literally a bumpy ride. And at least now some directional sense in terms of, what all things we can do, purely keeping technology or group of technologies at the center point, of it. And what we are, contextualizing is that we focus a lot more on technology around AI, IoT, automation, and we see a lot of problem statements around entire industry, not only renewables but electricity in general, and also other segments where we can apply those technologies. For example, in IoT, we still have millions and millions of digital meters. Can you convert them into smart meter? The smart meter today, what you are installing are nothing but similar set of meters which are just relaying data. Can you make your current digital meters to also do the same? They also have 30 minutes, historical data stored in the meter, right? They can be converted into smart. Why replace the infrastructure? Similar are the problems in the gas industry. So if you crack that, I mean, it's a pretty big market. Similarly,
True.
weather, when you look at weather, remains like a fundamental factor impacting everyone's life, right? And it's a very complex subject. We of course can't do all the work that the national level or international organizations like NASA or ECM in Europe or IMD in India are doing. But what we want to do around weather is that we have built capabilities to do weather computation on our own at a global scale. Can you deliver insights around weather to the common people? Classic example could be after COVID, one thing has changed dramatically. Earlier, if you sneeze, people will show sympathy. Now, if you do, I mean, they'll give you some curse words and say, "Please go away."
Yeah.
Right. I mean, influenza like illness, and there is a strong relation between the weather patterns and ILI. Can you create a framework where you can create those triggers for individuals where you want them that weather is going to be like this over next week or next 10 days, and this is reasonably reliable in terms of prediction accuracies. If you see, if you know the location of a person, the a basic demographic profile, you can pretty much give an alert that you need to take precautions not to get caught with a cold, right? And that can do a lot of preventive kind of healthcare management for group of individuals. Similarly, for farmers, again, how do you share all the information with them in a more meaningful way? Whether you just provide numbers on the website or it's not what it means. Weather means different things for different people, different businesses, right? How
Correct.
do you contextualize that whole information which starts making sense for the end user? And this is like another large use case, right? I mean, this can pretty much go beyond what we are doing for around weather within this renewable space. So we see a lot more roadmap for us to kind of go deeper into these technologies, build larger use cases for broader ecosystems, and not just revolve around renewables or electricity in general.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, and good to know that you have a good plan in place to go actually mine data and make
Right.
value out of it. That's nice. It's been a good conversation, and it's good to know and hear about a story. I mean, a story of about 10 years of work that's gone into this space, building a company right from scratch, pivoting multiple times, different
Yeah.
solutions, different products, dealing with the regulators, especially in the electricity sector. Regulators play the game and kind of
Yeah.
maneuvering among around all this and still positioning, bringing value proposition to customers is like really a good achievement.
Thank you, Girish.
Congrats to you on that.
I think the congratulations should go to all our team members, the current as well as the past, who believed on the team and organization. There was no organization, right?
True.
Also, people like Infuse who kind of literally betted on few individuals that okay, I mean, we know the market is going to be tough, but this guy seems decent. Let's bet on these guys. And
I think they just took a point saying like, yeah, these guys can be there for the long run, and this has been a good journey. I'm sure like there'll be
yeah,
few more decades where you will just pivot and get more solutions on ground,
yeah,
and especially on the team. I must admit, I've interacted with a few of your team members in the past,
right.
so I'm you definitely built a credible team. So
Thank
even
you.
today, if you ring them up, they will definitely have positive things to tell about working in REConnect.
Right, right.
So yeah, thanks for taking time to join me on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Girish, and it's been a exciting conversation, and glad that you gave us an opportunity to speak.
So that was the show for this week. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did in interviewing Vishal. As I've said earlier, I have seen the growth of REConnect as an industry observer, but it felt really good hearing it from Vishal, with all the minor details on what really happened all along the way. The links to connect with Vishal will be on the show notes section of this podcast episode and also on the webpage that is missionshunya.com. And as always, I am just a line away from your feedback. you can tag me across the social media channels or write an email to missionshunya@gmail.com. So with that, this is Girish Shivakumar, and as always, thank you for listening.